Welcome to the Jersey Justice Podcast, featuring your hosts, attorneys Gerald Clark and Mark Morris.
Okay, cool. Bill Spadea. The man, the myth, the legend. I don't know. It's so funny, the difference between like a public image, a personal image.
Yeah.
There's so much bullshit in politics today. It's just like
said well.
Yeah, like, and the social media is terrible. Like if someone were to meet, let's say someone's on the left and they're to meet you and like, oh, that's Bill Spadea, shock jock, right wing, whatever stuff has been called about you, which I don't know because
That's just my Republican opponents.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. But then when you meet someone in person, it's like totally different.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like
because they're not even listening to you.
Yeah.
They're forming that opinion because one person had a bad opinion, and they're like, "Oh, you should hear what he said on Twitter today, or what he said on the air today," and then people react, and all of a sudden you've got 20 people that are reacting to one guy's reaction of something I said that they didn't like.
See, I have this theory that, okay, so I got a new car recently, right?
What kind?
And what kind?
Yeah.
It's a sports car-ish type thing.
I mean, it's a nice law firm. Figure it's really nice.
Well, but listen,
I was going to say, right?
Yeah, it's
a nice car. Yeah.
No, my point is, I have a 2010 green pickup truck, which my wife like laughs when I'm driving in it and stuff. But I love it because I don't have to worry about getting sand in the car. Like, oh, clean your stuff. And I also have a stick shift, like a 2012 stick shift, which I love driving. Okay, and I got this new car, and I'm like, oh, it steers for you, and like, oh, it tells you this, and oh, it's like, and I was driving the other day, and I went for my clutch and the stick in the new car, which you can't even get a car with a stick anymore, and I'm like
extra for the manual transmission.
Yeah, but my point is this. My point is, at what point do we stop living? Okay, like if I'm driving a car, I love the stick, and so getting in the 2010 Tacoma, which it's got a gas, a brake, a shifter, and an AM and FM radio, and it's so relaxing. Now I get in this new car, and it's like I'm driving a goddamn cell phone. I get blips, beeps, this thing, that thing, and it's insane. And here's my theory, going back to what we're saying: the man, the myth, the legend, the personal image versus the person. It's like I went on something about Villanova basketball. I'm a big Villanova basketball fan, and I and all these guys are jumping on Kyle Neptune because he took the team over from Jay Wright, which was a blue chip program, and now he's losing. They're like, fire Neptune, fire Neptune. And Villanova is supposed to be like a family. It's not New York sports where you chop the guy's head off each time. And I go on and I simply said last night about the game. I went to the Seton Hall game with my daughter last night. I love the place. So I went there, and I said, great game. The program's really coming through the NIL growing pains. Great coach, great program, the whole thing. That's all I said.
Right.
That's all I said. You wouldn't believe the vitriol I got back. But here's my theory.
I bet you would believe.
Yeah, you would.
I've seen it all.
But here's my theory on all that. I don't think you're dealing with necessarily a human being that's responding. You're dealing with a bot, And we're doing an in-person podcast, which is fun because we get the in-person thing. Humans evolved this way, communicating this way, looking each other in the eye, not looking at a one-dimensional screen. And I think a lot of the angst and a lot of the craziness in the country and all this stuff it's the social media, because you're not dealing like if I say Kyle Neptune coached a great game last night, right?
Right.
Part of the response from the vitriol is AI. So they go and they type, and then immediately my name pops up. So it's like right in your face, and that's an AI component to it.
Well, the algorithm puts your post in front of people who are going to react to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it all lives on the reactions. You've got to have millions of reactions to make it work, which is why Elon Musk came out, I don't know if you saw the other day, he said, stop using hashtags.
Right.
Like, our system is good enough, you don't have to do that. The old way, use a hashtag to get potentially a person to react. We don't need that anymore.
Oh, that's funny. That's like Twitter's bread and butter.
Right, don't need it. No.
You've been in media.
It knows.
You've been in media for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, and I said to you this before we went on. They're like, oh, did you see his tweets today? Did you listen to his show today? And I said, A, no, because I didn't have time. But B, I don't want to have a conversation with some preconceived. They say your reputation precedes you. I didn't want that. I wanted to get you one-to-one, and it's, and I like that. I forget my train of thought.
No,
Mark.
it's probably, it's all right. It's a busy time of year. But the kind of concept I think you're hitting on, which is the same thing I think, is like you meet someone in person and you might be on this side of the aisle, like right, and we might be on this side of the aisle, like a little left. But you find you have way more common ground, and you find you're going to have a way more civil discussion than if you're sitting behind a computer screen like, you idiot, like, wow, that's such a stupid take. It's so easy to hide
My
behind
favorite
that.
is Reddit.
Oh, of course. You get destroyed.
Like we've got like the Hall of Fame in Reddit. We actually repost stuff because it's just so good.
Yeah.
I mean, the hate and the vitriol. It's like, you can't believe someone came up with the things that they say about me. And it's usually completely out of context and personal.
But
Yeah, that's a shame.
yeah,
Well,
And
but we only do it for fun, though. We actually did a poster that hung in the radio studio. I did a couple of posters of the best hate tweets. And like making fun of me.
Wow.
And it's like it was all personal stuff. The way I dress, the way I talk. I mean, I love it.
That's wild. I picture
Have fun with
Reddit
it.
too. Those threads, they start to indent more and more, building off each other and things. And,
So what I was getting to is, and you've been in media and stuff for a long time. Isn't there like a whole, okay, so I haven't watched the news since the election, okay? I guess November 4th, whatever. I was addicted to the news. I would click on CNN 50 times a day and back and forth. And like, I was watching how the election was going from my perspective, and I was peeking at it. I'm like, I was writing a brief that night in my kitchen, like really working hard, and I'm peeking. I'm like, oh, this is going the way it went.
Yeah.
And I just shut it off. And I haven't watched the news since.
Yeah.
I've been sleeping better.
Yeah.
I'm like in a better mood.
Tune it out. It's all crap.
I'm more focused at work. But isn't there a whole sort of media industry that is designed to piss people off just to get them to keep clicking?
Sure.
All the headlines in the old way, it said if it bleeds, it leads.
It's only clickbait, but it's always been clickbait.
Yeah.
It's the reason that radio matters. It's why podcasting
Right.
is growing. Podcasting is growing because people have no time. So people are listening to this while they're going for a run. They're at the gym. They've got their earbuds in, and their earbuds in, and they're listening. Like, that's so the podcast is on their time. Television is such a tune out now because you know what you're going to get depending on the station you tune into.
Yeah.
And radio is still dominant. I mean, I've been the number one show in New Jersey, radio show, with more than 1 million people listening to 101.5 for 10 years. And I've been on the air 10 years. I took over the number one show and made it even bigger.
Yeah.
Now, why? How? Since I got there, they've been saying radio's dead.
Right.
It's on the way out. Like, no, it's not. And here's why it's not. Because from the radio perspective, when I get to the mic, it's no different than this. There's nobody there except my crew, and the audience is vast. But I'm not talking to an audience of 1 million people. I'm talking to the guy who's driving the car.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, it's me and him. I'm sitting in the passenger seat. So what we learned is that radio translates better into real life than anything else.
Yeah.
Because I'm unscripted, unfiltered.
Yeah.
And now my opponents in the primary are loving that because I feel bad for the poor intern that's had to go cull through 10 years of crap to figure out, oh, we got this, we got that. But the point is that the unscripted conversation is what people like. They don't want talking points. They don't want a teleprompter. Obama ruined the teleprompter, and it's been getting worse ever since.
Hold on real quick.
Figured you guys both voted for Obama, so I'm just sticking that in.
Because
No.
he did so well. No,
No, I maintain my secret ballot. But here's the thing. So I listen to Joe Rogan a lot. Like I used to.
Rogan's
I still
great.
do. I still do. Okay. I listen
He's
to him.
entertaining.
And at some point, but he's also extremely informative.
Smart.
If anyone has problems sleeping, I highly recommend the Joe Rogan Sleep Podcast. The thing's really, really helpful. But here's the thing. So like at some point the media or certain parts of the media started jumping on him. And they did this piece on it. And I watched it, and I'm like, I listen to that show all the time. That is not right. They're taking a snippet. And then the other thing is like Kennedy, Robert Kennedy Jr. So I'm like, all right, anti-vaxxer, anti-this, anti-that. Let me say, I listened to his Joe Rogan podcast for 3 hours, 2.5,
really
3
good.
hours. And I'm like, this guy's not nuts.
No.
this, and like, so he took a bear, shot a bear, whatever, upstate, or he didn't shoot the bear, he picked it off the side of the road. And then I'm like, okay, it's a little weird, but that's not like he's some cuckoo. And all his kids have been vaccinated. And I was reading his book, The Real Anthony Fauci, and, you know, it's just like, there's a problem in this country with the immediacy, you know, the clicking, you know, frankly, and if you ever become governor, like, these kids are addicted to these cell phones. Kids don't know how to talk.
Right.
They don't know how to communicate. They can't look you in the eye.
But that's the problem with our school system.
Yeah.
So we've got legislation now that they've talked about how we handle cell phones in school. And you got school boards across the state that are saying we got to ban the cell phones in school. Here's the problem. The knee-jerk reaction to every problem is a ban. Mm-hmm. That's not the solution. You don't just say you can't. I've always said this. You can't ban distractions. You've got to teach people how to deal with distractions. We ban, we don't deal.
Yeah, but hold on a sec. Okay, so Roe v. Wade, okay, in the Constitution, there's nothing in the U.S. Constitution that says you have a right to privacy. It's nowhere. It doesn't say that anywhere. Okay. So the way they got the basis of Roe v. Wade is that you look at the penumbra,
the ring around the moon.
Yeah,
it's
like
cool word.
it's privacy.
Cool. Is there going to be a test?
Oh, hold on.
Yeah,
these books.
All right.
So listen. So
like penumbra?
Penumbra.
Yeah.
It's
like you can't
it just
quite
means it's
see it,
implied. It's
You
implied.
can see that there's something around.
So I want to
it.
use that in context later today.
So listen.
I entered my penumbra on the chair when I walked in.
So it doesn't say there's a right to privacy, okay? But it says there's search and seizure. So the cops can't just come in. The British soldiers can't come into your house. So the privacy is implied there.
Okay.
Okay. So when you say there shouldn't be bans on things, you know what I immediately think of. Ban is weapons. Okay. So
I'm not just talking about weapons. I'm saying that's a knee-jerk reaction that political people have. They're like, oh, is that hurting you? Ban it.
Yeah. But
how about we figure out how to deal with it?
Yeah, but
maybe there's a positive here.
Yeah, but this rights to guns stuff is crazy because the Constitution says there's a right to bear arms as long as it's part of a well-regulated militia, right? Isn't that what it says?
Yes.
It doesn't say as long as. It says as a part of a well-regulated militia, but nowhere in there does it deny a person the right to
So
have
I used to
an arm.
lifeguard on the beach, and I did it growing up and stuff, and we save people in high surf and everything. But you're also sitting there for a long time. And I remember we would have this argument with one of the guys I lifeguarded with, and I'm like, okay, so does that mean everyone can own nuclear weapons? You know, it's just my point is this. My point is very, very simply. I have a right to bear arms, so you can get an AR-15 that can mow down, 50 people in 30 seconds.
I have two AR-15s. Actually, I built them with my son.
Wow.
Fantastic.
And your background as a Marine.
I was in the Marine Corps. Yeah. But my dad taught me how to shoot when I was 12.
But
and by the way, you want more people like me in a position to protect and help.
But
that's part of the problem. Whether it's a conundrum or a
penumbra. I can't even say it. No,
one's a conundrum.
My God.
But my point
this is a conundrum, but I don't think the penumbrum solves it.
Some might say it's a clusterfuck. But here, listen.
Some would.
But listen. Here's my point. My point is the Constitution gives the right to bear arms, and by that, when it was written, there was only flintlocks around, I guess, and swords. As part of a well-regulated militia. Okay, but that's been expanded to the way it is today.
But you have to define militia. Remember, though.
Real quick.
Go ahead, Jerry.
But abortion. Oh, we can't have abortion because there's no, that's not in the Constitution. That's my only thing. I don't want to go in and have a big long thing about abortion.
Militia is where the definition is. If you go back to the time of the Constitution, every able-bodied man was a part of the militia. If you think about the defense of this country and the formation of the country, there wasn't a well-regulated meaning, okay, hey, we're all on call. The British are coming. We're meeting here. Yeah. Very different definition. Because the left tried to define it as, but then define what well-regulated is.
What is the left?
I think the left is a mindset. The left is a mindset of people that, again, the ban squad. We take something we don't like, and we're going to ban it.
I have the Psychiatric Diagnostic and Statistical Manual on the thing there. There's the left somewhere in that book of psychiatric disorders?
Great question. I don't know. Maybe.
Possibly,
All
right?
depends. All depends. But I think you got to go back to that word ban. Because I am a common sense candidate for governor. Like I am a Republican because the Republicans line up way more in theory than the Democrats. But I've run this radio show. I was on TV. I had a 7-year run on Fox. Fox TV was great. So I've been in media 12 years.
Yeah.
I was in business for a decade and a half before that. I've started a business. I've got a film company that makes movies that we sell to Lifetime. So I've kind of done it all. I've signed the back of the paycheck, the front of the paycheck, hired people, fired people, ran P&Ls. What I look at left and right is that is completely blurred now. There's a radical left, and we saw that, in my opinion, with certain policies. So I identify it by policies. So, for example, the wind power off the coast. There's a group of folks in society that say, well, we need wind power because it's clean.
Yeah.
We need wind power because it's sustainable. We need wind power because wind is free.
Yeah.
But then guys like me start looking at the common sense and the practical nature of it. I'm like, well, did you know that wind power is ranked last in capacity factor with the federal government? Like, it really doesn't work.
Did you hang at the beach much growing up?
I love the beach.
Okay, so
And the wind blows.
Would you be? You mean the wind blows? It's bad, or the wind?
No, the wind blowing is good.
Oh, okay.
But it
wind blows
doesn't
like
impact the wind turbines. That's the problem. That's what people are not realizing.
But if
they're down 75% of the time.
If you're hanging on the beach, are you going to want to see those windmills like off the coast and stuff? I think that'd be kind of bad.
No, I'm opposed to the windmills.
Yeah. See, I'm fully.
This is my point.
Listen to me. I'm fully in favor of. Who gives a shit what I what my view is? But
not your show.
It's not. Whatever. It's green energy.
But
who would not be in favor of green energy?
Thing.
The windmills are bad though because the things explode.
Windmills are not green energy. You know what green energy is? Nuclear power.
Yeah.
Hydrogen power.
Uranium.
Methane power. Well, think about it. There are waste management. Huge waste collection company, big business. In Texas right now, they're powering hundreds of thousands of homes with the methane coming out from the landfills.
Yeah.
Like that's it. You drive around New Jersey, you got all these white pipes sticking up.
Yeah.
They're venting this stuff. It's not going anywhere. I'm like, wait a minute. Why would you spend hundreds of millions of dollars to foreign companies? By the way, they're lying about it. These are not American-made. These are foreign-made blades and pipes and everything else. They're shipping it here, slapping a sticker on it, putting a coat of paint on it, calling it American. That's not creating jobs. So to me, I look at it, I'm like, well, why aren't we looking at the capacity factor? What produces energy the most? And what's the cheapest? What's the most abundant? And what's the cleanest? Nuclear is clean. Yeah. Not if I've got uranium in my pocket.
Sure.
Like I get that. I don't know. We've heard that these drones, not to bring up the drones, I'm sick of the drones, but that they're looking for like this lost nuclear fragment or something. And I'm like, well, that's certainly not good. But then you find out it's so small, it could barely power your phone.
Let me ask you a question. When you're on the radio, do you have your cell phone on the table like that?
Oh, yeah.
That's amazing. You're able to do that and not be distracted.
Not at all. I may tweet while we're talking.
Oh, please don't do that.
I'm just saying. That's what. So I'm like, because I'm so.
I said you're gonna. This is the biggest asshole podcast host ever.
He's talking about my right to bear arms.
This brick. Yeah.
I had a program director who would get pissed off.
Yeah.
Because I leave not only do I leave my phone on, but my ringer's on.
So you'd be talking and it'd still be going on?
One of the complaints I get is that people are driving down the highway and they're like,
they think it's their phone.
It's their phone.
You know what's
and
funny?
They've complained, and I'm like, sorry. How am I going to know if you're texting me or not? You're texting what? I'm like, I text and talk.
Yeah. As you were talking about different media platforms, I was thinking like radio. One of the things is typically you're not distracted by your phone. If you're driving and you're listening to the radio, if you're sitting there watching TV, you're just scrolling like, oh, all right, drones back. But if you're locked in,
I think it's an age function too.
I think you're right.
Under 40, totally distracted. Under 20, you're not even watching TV.
I got to tell you
what that is.
A funny story real quick about your radio show. Yeah. So I was going up to trial in Essex County. My paralegal, Meg, out there was driving.
Yeah.
She usually brings someone. She's a big fan of your radio show. I had never heard it.
I just met her. She's great.
I don't know if I'd heard before what, but I'm sitting there. I'm like doing my opening statement, working through it. And she's got your show on. I don't remember what you're talking about, but I was like, this is fascinating. I was like, shut this off. I'm distracted. I was like, because it was so I was so into it. And I was saying to your assistant, such a man of the people. Like people were calling in, I've got this going on in my kid's school. And you're like, well, we're going to figure that out. Even the past couple of days.
It's not ideological, right? I'm conservative on a lot of issues. I can check a lot of boxes.
Yeah.
And I do when it comes to politically speaking and what I'll fight for and what I'll represent. However, there's common ground. The average guy doesn't give a crap about whatever's in the Republican Party platform. They're like, you know what? I've had a pothole on my corner of my street for 18 months, and I've gone through 4 tires, and it's cost me $2,000. That's what they're pissed about. They're pissed about the fact that we were locked down during COVID, and the kids lost 2 years of school, and it set them back. They're mad about that. That's not a right or left issue. That's a mom and dad issue.
I brought some props. I had to bring that up. So during COVID, I was at the gym, and the gym would normally close at like 10 o'clock at night, and working's out is important to me. And it was like 8 o'clock. The lady comes in and says, "We're closing." And I'm like, "Oh crap!" And I can't not work out for an indefinite period of time. So I went on Facebook Marketplace. I bought all exercise equipment. I spent like 2-3 days doing it, and I'm like, God, what am I doing? I need to be at the office. And thank God I did, because after 4 days, it was all gone. So I set up a gym in my garage. And all the kids are out of school, so I had a gym in my garage, and I had all the kids coming over.
I love
high
that.
school kids. I got, by the way, I had them sign waivers. I got waivers.
That's hilarious.
No, and you should see the D1 players I have here that sign waivers, because all these kids are back from school. But you're gonna love this. So I was pulling this out because I was showing someone today. So I
Oh, my God.
I had is that coming up?
Unbelievable.
But listen, in the beginning, we didn't know. You know what I mean? We didn't know, but the kids were right. The kids were like, this is insanity.
Of course.
It's insanity.
Remember the first time I put a mask on? Whatever, I'm putting this on air. First time I put a mask on, we went to the grocery store. I was like, what is this thing? And I had to sneeze. So I pulled it down to sneeze. My wife's
Right.
like, what are you doing? I was like,
It
I
was
didn't
so
want to sneeze in the
stupid,
mask.
and some of us knew. I mean, we were fighting this from early on.
But how
And
did you know, though? How did you know? Was it just headline
why?
stuff? Or because we didn't know the science until, like, how did you know? Because, by
They're
the way,
still lying
this
about
book,
the science.
This book, The Real Anthony Fauci,
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's all 100%, but if this is right, this is scary and
It
compelling.
is scary. They're lying about. I started to question. I remember doing a show before.
Like, how did you know
COVID.
early? How did you know
I'll tell you.
early?
So pre-COVID, I started questioning the flu shot, and I remember having a doctor on, and I started pushing him, and I'm like, well, you're telling me I have to get the flu shot for herd immunity. I'm like, okay, well, let me understand what that even means. Well, you got to have 80%. This. I'm like, okay, well, how effective is a flu shot? He said, well, it depends. I'm like, well, what does it depend on? Well, it's actually the last strain that we're using, so we're kind of a flu behind. I'm like, hold on a minute. So you're telling me I take the shot, you want 80% of us to take the shot so we have herd immunity against something that already passed. I'm like, well, doesn't it mutate? Doesn't it change?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it changes. Well, okay, well, how effective is it? Depends.
You know,
Depends on what? You know what he told me? 18 to 30%. So I'm like, hold on a minute. You're telling me you want me to take something that's 18% effective. You won't let a kid in school or a teacher get their job. So I stopped taking the flu shot.
yeah,
And-
I've never taken it, but
Right?
I
So I'm
never- I didn't
I'm
take a
we
COVID vaccine
have it.
either.
So then COVID came, and a couple things started popping up early. And the most important thing that happened, in my opinion, was that ship. It was a cruise ship.
Yes.
A couple thousand
Yeah.
people. And like,
I thought everyone was going to die on the ship.
well,
from the headlines.
If Fauci was right, they would all be dead.
Right.
Yeah.
And I had this conversation with a state senator, and I'm like, and I said to him, like, Senator, I'm trying to wrap my head around this.
Right.
People are getting scared, and they're like, oh, masks and shots, and we don't have a vaccine for this, and we better stay home. And I'm like, let me just understand. There's a ship, and the Japanese government won't let the ship unload.
Yeah.
And you got a couple thousand people on there. I'm like, well, how many are dead?
Yeah.
They're like, well, like 12.
Was it really
12?
12 were dead?
At the end of the day, I think it was 17 or
Wow.
20. It was some.
Out of
it was such a
1,000.
small number. And I'm like, okay, so who died? Like
Right.
who's?
The
Because
elderly,
should
the
I be
infirm.
worried? I
And
don't know.
how did they die?
Right. So it turns out everybody that died, and you could fact check me on the number, whatever it was, 30. It was low. It was like this tiny percentage. I'm like, well, who died?
Right.
They're like, well, 80-ish in
Yeah.
age, fat,
Yeah.
diabetic, heart disease. I'm like, let me just understand. So you're telling me people who are already vulnerable, like literally a stiff breeze might kill them,
Yeah.
died of this thing, and then after that whole thing, there was a video that went around. You may have seen this video because you asked me how I knew.
Yeah.
That was so I had 3 steps in my process. First, the flu shot, when I'm like, well, that sounds like, what's the right word for it? Oh, we're not on an FCC licensed broadcast, so I can say total bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, that's complete bullshit.
Yeah.
So then we went to the next thing, the ship. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. Obviously, these people were already vulnerable. So that concerns me about my parents, my grandparents, in-laws. Then we went to the last thing. And this was probably in early February, maybe. There was a video that came out. Now, we're in 2020. Video comes out, right, that there was this Japanese guy, business guy, maybe it was Chinese, I don't remember, but it was one of the state media. Guy walks out of a store, he's in a nice, sharp-looking suit, normal-looking guy, he's got a couple of shopping bags, boom, he hits the deck. And out of the corner of the screen, 3 guys in hazmat suits rush over and remove him. Yeah. Do you ever see this video?
No.
So we ran this video, and I'm like, were the hazmat guys like just expecting him to die?
Yeah.
It was like, I'm like, that looks like propaganda to me. And my brain went, no way. This is a complete lie. And then every couple of weeks, more and more and more.
Do you think?
And I never got the shot. I never wore a mask. I never kept my distance. Nothing. We lived our normal life.
Do you think having this experience in media and having spent time, you spent time in Washington too, right? Like you worked.
Yeah, I worked for the first President Bush. Not to age myself.
Let's do the boring stuff real quick.
Question though.
There's no boring stuff. It was
Not
very
boring.
exciting.
Question. Do you think?
It's true.
Do you think those experiences and being in media better enable you to pick up bullshit and propaganda? Like, can you see it easier than
100%.
the person that's used to?
I don't know if I see it easier. I think that the difference is I have 2 advantages being in media that I didn't have when I was in politics, didn't have when I was in business. I get to hear from man on the street constantly 4 hours a day.
Calling in.
True.
Calling it.
Big time.
There's no filter.
But Howard Stern always makes fun of like, oh, you're the type that calls into radio shows. Isn't there a certain element
why?
that calls
A long
into
time,
radio
first
shows?
time.
You know what? Because he's an asshole. That's why.
But let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question.
And by the way,
let me ask you a
Howard
question.
Stern wasn't always like that. Howard Stern was this innovative guy that related to people, had a show. I listened to Howard Stern.
But someone said, oh.
Then he became a complete jerk.
Someone said, shock jock Bill Spadea. Let me ask you a question. In 2024, what does it take for someone to attain the shock jock title? Like, doesn't anything go today? What's shocking? Is there anything shocking
I am
anymore?
not only, none of what I do is shocking.
Yeah.
Right.
That's my point.
Shock jock is used to attack me.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
That is your Reddit user, etc. The reason I have a reaction to a guy like Howard Stern, because there are a lot of guys out there like that, they hold people in contempt. They don't like them. They're like, you're just not the right guy. You don't have the right suit. You don't wear the right jewelry. You didn't go to the right school.
Yeah.
People are sick of it. You know, I've said this a long time on the air. Why is it that we have an entire culture based on every kid out of high school has to go to college? Like, if you look at the logic of college, most of these kids, shouldn't be there.
What's that line from Caddyshack? You know the line from Caddyshack about that?
Dan, it's not. I can picture what you're talking about. I don't remember the line though.
Remember Schmales? Schmales?
Yeah.
And he's
Oscar,
like,
pull
the
that
world
up.
needs ditch diggers too, you know?
Yeah.
That's one of the...
There were tradesmen or union guys that are
Is that what you
making
mean when
6
not
figures?
everyone
I
needs to go
mean,
to
there are
college?
guys turning a wrench making 6 figures
Yeah, of
with
course.
no
Yeah.
debt.
Yep.
So you tell me this 18-year-old kid, if I show you, Jody and I, my wife and I went, we toured for the last couple of years. We've been to these career and technical education centers, right?
Yeah.
So this is all about the trades. You go by, these kids are like rebuilding lawnmowers, working on cars. They're smiling, they're happy.
Yeah.
You go to a typical college classroom, the kids are miserable.
Yeah.
They're angry.
Oh,
They wanna skip-
I'm
they
sorry.
hate.
Hold on. A typical college classroom, I think, I disagree that they're mostly angry. But where do you get your energy from? You're like 55, right?
55. I'm a senior now.
I mean,
in New
holy
Jersey.
crap! Like, where do you get this energy from? It's impressive. And you look in great
I
shape
don't know.
too.
I
You
do
work out
hot
and stuff.
yoga. I practice
Nice.
hot yoga.
I used
4
to
to 5
cheat during
times a
hot
week.
yoga. I'd go near the door so I could get the cold air in there.
I admit I have cheated once in a while. That is okay.
I like
every
hot
once in a while.
yoga. Yeah.
But I was in the Marine Corps, and
What did you do in the Marines?
So I was in artillery.
Okay.
So I enlisted in the Marines while I was in college. So I
What
was very
year?
unique in that. This was 1990 into 91.
Near Boston
And
University.
Boston University, and which is where I met Jody. So we were both students at BU friends for 7 years before we got married.
That was
and
around the
it
Gulf
was-
War time, wasn't it?
Well, that's what got me inspired. Remember, this was like the early 90s. There was no cell phone. There was
Iraq
no
invading Kuwait
This is
got
great.
you,
This is the-
inspired you?
Yeah, because it was our response to it.
Right.
Because remember, CNN was the first cable network out there.
Yeah, Wolf Blitzer,
Right.
that made his name.
And it
Covering
was
them.
we called it Gulf War coverage,
Right.
for many years,
Yeah.
because it was 24/7. It was it. It was the war.
Yeah.
So we're all these young guys, and I'm like, and it was probably February that the war started. So my senior year, March on my birthday, I went down to the recruiting station and I enlisted.
Wow.
Called my dad. I'm like, I just enlisted in the Marines. He's like, Are you what? What?
And so
What are
tell
you
us
talking
your,
about?
and tell that
So
story.
the Marine
what'd you do?
Corps.
What'd you
So
do?
the Marine Corps deferred my enlistment.
They say you talk too
They're
much.
like,
or
you have
something?
to graduate. Yeah, well,
never
they're
shut
like,
up.
no, you got to graduate first. And I'm like, why would I have to graduate to go to Paris Island? Well, I learned.
They said, all right, we'll give you the radio department. That's it.
yeah.
Good morning, Persian Gulf.
Yeah, this is like this. This is like my last career. It's really, I've done nothing like this. I was a history major. Talk about boring. The boring stuff first.
This is the boring stuff.
History
I'm happy.
major.
Now,
Yeah.
excuse me,
Yeah, yeah.
history's fascinating.
I love it too.
That's why I
I
brought these
studied
books.
it. But so I enlist, and the Marine Corps, they're like, look, we're not going to take you until after you graduate. So I thought, all right, Dad will be happy about that. That's probably a good thing. So I went, I graduate. They defer me to November, and what I did was I had what's called a 4x4 program. So it was an enlistment where you're active for 6 months. You go to Paris Island. I went to Camp Geiger, Camp Lejeune, Camp Johnson, and then Fort Sill, where I learned artillery. My job in the Marine Corps was artillery. So I was called Fire Direction Control. My MOS was 0844 for any jarhead out there. And literally they issue you pins, a protractor, and pencils. So we had to learn how to direct artillery fire on a map with a protractor. In the end.
Wow.
Yeah, right? So apparently, thank God I was half decent in math.
Does that take into account wind like a sniper would, or no?
Gotta get the protractor to figure it
The
out.
protractor didn't
Yeah.
help you on that. You had guys with the weather, you had forward observers.
They do take-
so
they
there were
take into account
everything
wind?
is taken into account. I mean, there's
wow.
a science to it. The reason you learn with what we call charts and darts is that sometimes the computers don't work. So in a combat situation, you're trained to do this, with a pencil and a protractor.
So, well, thank you for your service.
So
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
thanks. So
That's cool.
I appreciate that, but I see. Look, there are a lot of guys that deployed. I never deployed. It was I was literally in between both wars. So I enlist in 91. I get out of Paris Island, and I start working. And then I'm doing the weekend a month. They tell you it's a weekend a month. It's kind of 4 days a month, and then it's 2 weeks in the year. But it's constant drilling and contact. And then after 4 years, you do inactive reserve. So I had a great experience. And then in 1999, our daughter was 2 years old. So I'm married 5 years. I got a 2-year-old daughter. And my contract is up. And I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm working now. I'm living in D.C. So then 9/11 happens. And a lot of the guys that I served with, they went overseas in that fight. So thank those guys.
Yeah.
Thank those
big
guys
time.
because they were shooting at them. And but the experience was great because there's nothing like the discipline. You ask about my energy.
Yeah.
The Marine Corps will tell you we owe you 1 meal and 2 hours of sleep a day. That's it. Anything else is a bonus. So you learn to sleep anywhere. So I could literally fall asleep anywhere.
Wow.
Bright lights, noise,
fun.
and I'm disciplined enough now to sleep for a couple hours and just get up and do the job.
I'd say almost a third of our guests have been Marines or have
Really?
a Marine background. Our first guest was this guy, Bill Brown, who went through SEAL school with David Goggins and
No kidding.
yeah, and all
David
that.
Goggins,
Yeah.
amazing. Amazing
Tough
book he
guy.
wrote. Yeah.
But it seems like each one of those guys has like a tireless work ethic. They're doing all this different stuff. So
I think the
wild.
Marine Corps draws certain people to it. And I think if you're the right fit, it helps shape your mindset.
So you graduated college, went to the Marines, then what? Where'd you go next?
So then I went to Washington and I worked for then President Bush. So the first one,
The dad.
the dad.
What'd you do with him?
I
Were
was
you allowed to
I was
say?
the, I can tell you, yes, nothing top secret.
I did what my government asked of me, and
Yeah, that's it. Name, rank, and serial number. That's all I can tell you. But I was the National Youth Director.
Wow.
So my job was the 18 to 29-year-old vote. And I mean, there was so much in that campaign. It was cool because we were right down the street from the White House, right on 15th, and the Clinton campaign had an office across the street, and we would taunt each other with poll numbers. Every time a good poll came out for us, we'd put it up in big letters. They would do the same thing with the numbers. That, of course, they ended up on the right side of that, and we didn't. But it was a great experience, and I stayed in D.C. for a few years, worked on some campaigns, and then moved back to Jersey.
I was a junior in college during that election, and then my second semester junior year, I interned for Bob Dole. And my first day in Washington was Clinton's inauguration day.
No kidding.
So I guess we kind of overlapped.
Yeah,
a
how
little
cool.
bit.
Yeah.
And my first, I was an intern for Bob Dole in the Senate building. I sat next to the copy machine, which happened to have a window which overlooked the Washington Memorial. It was pretty wild.
It's almost surreal living in D.C. I
Yeah.
mean, it's, we lived I lived on Capitol Hill for a while, and then it started to get dangerous even back then.
Yeah.
And I remember...
So all those conservative policies made it dangerous. But anyway, go ahead.
Well,
you were saying what?
It actually was really the muggers who the liberals let out of prison too early. But, either way, it's there was a congressman that got mugged like 2 blocks from my house. I'm like, I don't know. This is, that's it. If a member of Congress is not safe walking from the Hill to his car.
Yeah, I had friends that went to Catholic University.
Yeah.
And it was like kind of the same thing.
You kind of knew D.C. was falling apart, just what New York Ave looked like coming in. We lived in Georgetown after we got married, and Georgetown was and still is a great spot.
Yeah, I got a quick, funny DC story. So my dad was in law enforcement. He's a police officer for 26 years, went through the FBI Academy and all that. And we went down to DC, and I think it was like the it must have been like the Lincoln Memorial. And my dad sees a security guard, and he's like, I can get us in. I'll go up there, show him my badge. So he's running up the steps, goes to reach for his badge, and falls down the stairs like that. The guy's like, what's this guy going for? And he's like, I'm in law enforcement. We're just trying to get a tour and all that.
I just want a free tour.
Yeah. And he's like, what's
Did you get the tour?
We got the tour. It's cool.
All right, there
Great
you go.
building. I don't
Did you
remember
get
which
hurt?
one, apparently, but no, I didn't get it.
So my first day as an intern, my job was to walk his dog, Bob Dole's dog.
No kidding.
Yeah, the dog's name was Leader. It was like this little schnauzer type thing.
Sorry about that.
That's amazing that you can have a phone.
Now,
there.
if we were on a news break, I would answer that call.
That's funny.
It's crazy.
But what's fascinating though, so like we're litigators, we're in court a lot. If we were ever in court and acted like politicians do at a debate or said the things that politicians say during an election, we would like get sanctioned by the court because we have rules of professional conduct. There's a certain civility to it. And I was also fascinated because I was recently watching tapes from Ronald Reagan's library. With YouTube, you could see anything these days.
Yeah.
And I would watch it, and just the class and the mutual respect across the aisle. It carried from Reagan to Bush. I mean, the Bush family was the most classy. Whether or not you agree with their policies or this on this issue or that. Like, is there any hope of getting that back? It seems like then when George Bush, the son, made a statement after Obama won that election, it was a classy statement. We're going to work with them. It's like, the peaceful transfer of power. Like, are we ever going to get back that kind of civility? And maybe the civility is not a good thing because back in that day, there was only 4 channels. And Walter Cronkite could tell the nation what to think just by giving his thing. Now there's so many things. Like, don't we need to get like a basic civility back? You know what I mean?
No, we don't.
Why? That's
because
not
we
good.
ought to be
That's
fighting.
not good.
No, it is good. Here's why.
Fighting how, though? Fighting how?
Well, fighting through the
like
process.
you questioning the COVID thing
Yeah.
was a great story. And the free speech and that. And what was terrible was people would go on podcasts and just give a simple, hey, the science is this, or just simply
You'd
say
be
anything.
canceled, the vitriol,
That's
the
that's
hate,
crazy.
The problem
That's crazy.
is not. So this is why I say no, because the challenge is that politicians should fight like hell. That's why we have primaries. That's why we have elections. Be able to come together afterward for the good of the country, the good of the state, the good of the district.
Do you think that's going to happen in January here?
It already does happen, and
this time around?
Yeah, here's the problem.
Is it going to come?
We are completely overwhelmed and inundated with social media.
Right.
Now everyone has the same platform. That's the problem. This vitriol, the reason I say no is I don't want to see, if you're fighting over something as fundamental,
right,
as a firefighter losing their job because Ross Baraka, who is one of the Democrat candidates for governor, is forcing a vaccine mandate on firefighters without a
Right.
medical or a religious exemption, you ought to be hopping mad, fighting like hell, because there are firefighters that lost their job. There are corrections officers that lost their job. There are people that, there are, let me tell you this, I would get stories and calls from parents and counselors at school from teenagers. There was one teenager in Hamilton whose parents went out for the afternoon, senior in high school,
Yeah.
football player, hung himself in his basement.
Yeah.
Because he had been isolated. So if you're not angry and mad and ready to fight like hell to save that kid, I don't know what would get your juices flowing.
But if
So
if one loses an issue,
Well, wait,
then we should
it's
fold
not-
in, right?
Most political people do. It's all a show. Most
Right.
of these guys in the back room, they are doing what you think. The difference is in the old days, that's what got reported. What
Right.
gets reported today
It's the
is all the
extremes.
noise. It's all the noise. The crisis is not political people fighting each other. The crisis is that the news exacerbates the problem and says, "Oh, you had a nasty tweet." I contend the algorithms are designed for that. How is it possible that
Contend.
people
I mean,
all
that's-
across the world see
that's-
some of my tweets and they come out and they wish I was dead? I get death threats. We had to have all kinds of security. People call the radio station. "Oh, I got enough bullets for you and your wife." It's insanity out here.
Remember back in the day when we were kids or whatever, and there'd be one kid here. Do you hear what he just said about you? You gonna take that?
Yeah.
Those are fighting words.
And then they fight.
And then they fight. That's sort of like the media, isn't it? In a way, where it's getting people to.
Here's the problem. We haven't learned, like I said, let's go back to the band, right? This is a distraction in class, therefore you can't have it. Well, all that tells me, as a parent, we had our kids with cell phones very young.
Yeah.
Because we wanted them to be able to walk to school. And I'm like, I don't trust anybody to tell me what's going on with my kid. We see some of these lockdowns, everything else. I'm like, no, kids, you have a phone. You call mom and dad if there's something going on.
Yeah.
So that's a different mentality. So my point is that the greatest insult and tragedy in this country when it comes to exactly what you're talking about is we started telling our kids and our families publicly, do not talk about politics and religion in polite company. I say we should only be talking about politics and religion. I don't know what's more important than politics and religion when it comes to our society and how we get along. The minute we said ban the conversation, we lost the ability to have the conversation. So now, when politics and religion come up, we're not civil. So the extended answer, I say no, because the objective should not be to get back to civility.
Yeah.
We'll get there if it's a root cause problem. The root cause is we can't have conversations. That's why Joe Rogan is so good. That's why I love this format of podcast. That's why I love the radio. You could be a Kamala Harris voter who thinks I'm a nut for supporting Second Amendment right to bear arms and the right to life and all these things. But we're right here in front of each other having a normal conversation.
Should there be any limits on it? Like, what limits on the Second Amendment? Because you take it to the extreme.
There already are limits.
I know, but I'm just take it to the extreme, which is like, okay, you can own nuclear weapons. Okay, so the one thing you can own nuclear weapons on the one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum is you can own the plastic fork.
But there's such a thing
how do we deal with that?
There's such a thing
Where do
as
we
common
fall?
sense with this,
Of
right?
course. So where's your common sense?
well,
I'm not trying to nail you down on the
No, no,
issue
no,
because
no,
I don't.
no,
I don't.
look,
I don't want to go through issues. That's boring.
There are levels of military grade equipment that would pose a threat to a neighbor, even if you're not skilled enough to use it. So therefore, obviously, nuclear weapons, obviously tanks and howitzers. I would,
But how about
my neighbor doesn't need a
guy
howitzer.
in Las Vegas that's he's in the fucking room and he's boom, 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 boom.
I think there's a lot more to that story.
What the hell's the
I think there's a
need
lot
for
more to
that?
that story. I doubt the
Sandy
official
Hook,
story.
they mowed down
I
the
think
kids
that
in the
they're-
classroom.
But
What's the
again,
deal with that?
mental illness.
Yeah.
Vegas is different. Look at the school shooting that just happened. Another
I don't even know about it because I don't watch news.
Another kid on some kind of blockers or something else lost their mind. How many shooters is that now in this trans community of young people being given puberty blockers and other things way too young to even be having that conversation, let alone be drugged up, and another mental illness shooter. I think we have a mental illness crisis in this country, not a gun crisis. I really believe that because look,
Why do we need these guns though?
you got to be able to protect yourself.
Why does
From
it seem
what?
like it's just us?
Intruder. Home
what?
invasions are up 20% in this state right now. Home invasions. People are kicking in your door. I have a
Somebody stole my
loaded gun.
ski boot bag.
We
I
pay
have
a lot of
loaded
taxes
firearm
for
by
cops. We pay a lot of taxes.
Yeah,
for
but we
cops.
have an attorney general who disparages the cops and won't let them do their job. One
All
of the first
does
things
he
I'm going to
disparage
do.
all cops or just
All cops.
every cop?
They
Every
disparage
single cop.
oh, this attorney general is as anti-cop as you get. He's suing the state police. He's blaming the state police for a rise in road deaths because they're not pulling over enough people. He's not taking any responsibility for the fact that they changed the rules of engagement, that they will go sack a cop who gets into a situation where a white cop pulls over a black driver. All of a sudden, that guy is the racist of the week. Of course they're pulling over fewer people.
Let me ask you a question. People are so cynical about politicians, and we talked about this a little bit.
They hate politicians. And I'm not a politician.
Not all politicians, but
many.
But listen, people. We talked a little bit before we got on, and one of the things that's sad, I think, in this country is that if you're in Congress, apparently they spend, I don't know what the number is, 70-80% of the time running for the next election or raising money. And what happens is, someone has an idea. I'm going to be outside. I'm going to be different. I think at one point Bernie Sanders is like, I'm only going to take small donations. It seems like once, and I'm not saying everything, but there seems to be some sentiment in the country for that once they get into office, well, now all the money that got them there, and then they have to answer. McGreevey talked about that in his book. I read his book. He's like, all these people, after I get in, were calling me and say, I want my payback. I want my payback. Yeah. I want this. I want to be the head of this authority. I want to do this. If you come along and you get elected, you become the governor, are you just going to be another one in the line, or how will you be different? How will you be removed?
I'm going to tell you, I'm already different.
Kind of that
I'm already
stuff.
different.
But how can you be different and get in, given how much money it takes to get elected?
It takes a lot of money. Here's how. So Jim McGreevey, not unlike my opponent Jack Ciattarelli, who has been running now for 9 years, comes from is a product of powerful forces.
Right.
That
developers and stuff like that.
We want you, Jim. Jim was essentially recruited to be governor, which is one of the reasons why, even though we're on opposite sides of a lot of issues, I commend him on what he's done with prisoner reentry. I think he'd be a great mayor in Jersey City. There's no Republican running. I mean, to me, McGreevey at least understands the management part of it.
He's smart as shit,
guy.
McGreevey. He went to Ivy League and all that.
He's had the redemption. He rebuilt his life. We could argue all day long about what happened during his administration, and it wasn't about him being gay.
What's the Bible parable about that?
Well,
give me a Bible parable to what you just said.
A Bible parable about what I just said? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, let the one who has no sin cast the first stone, that kind of thing,
But it's even beyond that. It's that if you make a mistake, society allows for redemption. That's why every mistake does not end up with a life sentence or a death penalty. It ends up in you do a certain amount of time, you get out, and now rebuild your life. So he's living it. He's like, I did the time, not in jail, not as a criminal, but as a guy that blew up his family, a guy that blew up his career. Yeah. I mean, I'm sure the guys behind him were saying, Jim, going all the way, going to make you president.
Yeah.
The problem is you should not be in a position of power if somebody is behind you saying, I'm going to make you. I'm going to do this.
Right.
Jack, my opponent, is a product of lobbyists. So you've got these major lobbying firms that represent Democrats and Republicans. That's why Jack, all through the election with Murphy, it's why he lost. He took no stands. Why? He was owned by that lobbyist who is owned by the left, this one with the right, couldn't take any stands. Right. So what did he talk about? Taxes. Yeah. That was it. And he got blown up. Why am I different? A couple of things. First of all, no one came to me and said, we're going to make you governor.
Yeah.
No one. This happened because I started a group. So COVID was a big turning point for me. I had I had run for office before. I ran for Congress.
I mean, you talk about America and freedoms.
Yeah.
The
wasn't America for those 2 years.
The lockdowns, you got to get a jab of this experimental drug. It was insane. It was nuts.
You asked earlier, what's left? What do you mean by that, right? Yeah. So the left and the right are interesting.
We'll check the DSM book. It
might
be in there.
We'll do
I think there's something
the overlapping circles.
I think there's something in there about crazy right wingers too. But anyway,
any extreme is going to steer you in one direction or not. What's funny about the vaccine is the vaccine was good on the right when it was warp speed in Trump, but it was bad on the left. The minute Biden took office, vaccine is bad on the right, good on the left. So I'm like, whoa, the vaccine didn't change.
Yeah.
What just happened? I'll tell you about the drones. Political. I am being hammered right now for calling out this nonsense that the governor is down on the job. How is he not communicating better with the White House? The White House saying maybe we're seeing stars and not drones. I'm only being attacked on the left. The left has now decided, and by left I mean liberal journalists, people on social media who are the Kamala Harris group versus the Trump group. The Trump guys are supportive. The Kamala Harris guys are like, he's crazy. That was an airplane. Everything is politicized today.
Yeah,
so back to your original
sure.
question. Here's why I am not only different, but I'm literally not a politician. I'm a guy who is a dad, a husband, a Marine, a business owner, and a guy that communicates well because I have an audience to show for it. Remember, my audience is not a Hannity audience. I do not have some right-leaning audience. I am dealing with a third Democrat, a third Independent, a third Republican.
You're sure of that?
We survey this every 2 years.
I'll tell you real quick.
We know our audience,
Yeah,
right?
in Monmouth and Ocean County, he's got an 8.8 Nielsen rating, and your radio station was twice as popular as the next largest station.
Right.
At least as of
That's just
2021.
Monmouth and Ocean, and that was 2021. You know where I am now? We're over 15 in a lot of these counties.
Wow.
So it literally a 15 share. 8.8 is a big share because you're double digits over the next guy. Imagine in Somerset, Union, and Middlesex, we jumped to a 15.4, 15.5, unheard of in radio. Why? Audience is 55% women. Those talk shows that you talk like all around the country, 80% men. Mine is completely different. Why? I speak the truth. I find common ground. And here's what I did. In 2021, I tried to get Jack. I offered it to him. Come on the radio. Nobody dislikes Murphy more than I do.
Right.
Because, by the way, Jack, you were silent through the lockdowns, and I spent every single show attacking the lockdowns and speaking on behalf of real people. So I said, come on the radio. He refused to come on the radio.
Did your radio continue during the COVID and lockdowns?
Oh, we never stopped. Yeah, we never stopped. That's a long story.
Yeah, but anyway, I don't
good
mean to
one. But I'll
interrupt
just
that.
real
Keep
quick
going.
with this.
Yeah.
So Jack refuses. He turns down an offer to. He was asked to help the firefighters in Newark. Nope, not going to do that. Talking about taxes. Totally ignored everybody.
Yeah.
And started attacking Trump in October. I'm like, this guy is going to lose. So we're done. We know what's going to happen, and of course it happened. And it wasn't close. 85,000 votes. Christie won by a similar margin, beating Corzine. Nobody ever said Christie won a close one. They're like, wow, he killed Corzine. Look at that.
Yeah.
So Jack got creamed in 21. Now he's out trying to do it again, but what did I do? In that time, I said, this guy's a loser and has no solid, approachable, relatable policies.
Right.
If this guy represents the Republican Party's dead. So I launched a group called the Common Sense Club. Common Sense Club was not
Some may
partisan.
say the Republican Party died when Trump took it over, but
No, it's the
continue.
exact opposite. Trump saved it.
It's very
Trump literally
it's
saved it.
very different from the Bush Party. You have to
Yeah.
admit that.
Thank God.
It's very different.
Yeah, you know why?
He used to
Because
work
we
for
now
Bush.
well, yeah, but we now represent.
I can't even keep
you
up.
worked
I'm
for-
just like
you worked for
watching
Bob
a
Dole.
tennis match.
Bob Dole is not a Republican that I would look up to today.
Oh,
and he-
come on. Are
right?
you kidding me?
No,
He's a
that's
war hero, the guy.
So was John McCain. He was one of the worst senators we've ever had.
Oh.
And would have been a horrible president. Anyway, so look, you don't take away their war hero status, but that doesn't mean I want to vote for you. I mean, for that
Agreed,
matter,
of
Rudy
course,
Giuliani
agreed.
guided us through 9/11 in New York and was a beacon of hope. But let me tell you something. You look at
What
his poll
happened to
numbers.
him? What
Yeah,
happened to him?
that's a
Oh,
shame.
Right? I don't know. He went off
I mean,
the
he
rails.
was like America's mayor.
Yeah.
Can I?
So I just want to say real quick.
Go
so,
ahead.
So
Yeah.
I started the Common Sense Club. The Common Sense Club was designed to be not partisan. It was all about giving people a voice. Because I'm like, I've got this huge radio show.
Right.
I'm talking to people. The worse things get, the better my ratings. So I'm like, well, I want to stay in Jersey. I want my kids to move back here. So we launched the group. Then we paralleled a new group called Elect Common Sense. Elect Common Sense has 105,000 unique donations. Average donation, we raised $1 million in 10 months. Average donation, $11.14. My promise to people and my experience will show it. If you look at my history, I represent regular people. The difference is that the party of the Bushes and the Doles and the McCains was an elite party of special interests. We now, meaning me, President Trump, guys like us, represent people that turn wrenches, that put on uniforms, that have 3 jobs to make ends meet, real people. So we turned listeners into activists, and we got involved in 400 local campaigns across the state in the last 2 years. Jody and I have literally knocked on thousands of doors. We go door knocking for school board candidates, for mayoral candidates, council candidates. So I'm running for governor because I realized that the stupid Republicans were going to nominate Chitterelli again.
Have
Like,
you
what are
had-
you guys nuts?
Have you had any debates yet?
the coming up.
No,
on the
coming up
5th,
February 4th is the first debate. I can't wait. It's at Rider
feel like you'd be
University.
a good
The 4th,
debater.
hold on.
I'm looking forward
oh,
to
yeah,
it.
my bad. I'm sorry. February 4th.
February 4th. Yeah, 7 o'clock
Second
at
is the
Rider.
Democratic.
And then we had one.
But let me ask you a question
Yeah.
for the debate. Are you going to prepare and pour over statistics
No.
and like
No,
look
I
at
read
all the
3 hours every day.
issues? You'll just
You said you read 3 hours every day.
every day. Yeah.
What do you read?
I have to everything. I mean, I start on Twitter because I find that most people tweet whatever they've just read, and you can get any white paper you need, any research, you find it on Twitter.
All right,
It's
real
been
quick,
great.
let's
or
just-
X. Sorry,
let's
I don't
just-
mean to insult Elon Musk.
yeah.
let's just hit the drones real quick. Is that all right?
Yeah.
All right, but can I just give you my thoughts on it?
Yeah, go
And
ahead.
then you tell me your thoughts? All right. So I was driving on the Ocean Avenue in Spring Lake the other night. I forget where you were coming. It was me, my wife, and my daughter. And I'm looking up. I'm like, what the hell is that? And I'm on, and probably about 50 yards high, it's a drone. I mean, it's the white. It's got the lights, a thing. And I'm like, what? Holy shit. And by the way, not to go off on a thing, but
You sure it wasn't a star?
hold on. Just so, not to go off on a thing and down a rabbit hole, okay? But I'm like 60, 70% convinced that in UFOs, like that there's visitors here and they know about it. But I don't want to, listen, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
Can we talk about the moon landing?
No,
next?
but listen, stop. No,
All
because
right.
this is
I got a
related
cool
to it.
theory on the moon
No,
landing. I'm
it's
just saying.
it's related to it. It's related to it. I don't know.
Kubrick.
You'll see. There's David Fravor. Is he? He's a Navy pilot.
I don't think there are aliens, by the way.
All right, but all right.
throwing
Anyway,
that-
so I'm
just
looking
letting
at this thing.
I have a stance on
Been
nothing.
us all along.
And
No
then I
stance on
look
anything.
out, and there's another one. There's one over the lake in Spring Lake. I'm like, what the hell is this? So I'm doing it. I'm looking at it. I'm looking it up, and I'm like,
Gets out
and
his
then
protractor. Says, I'm
using-
taking
I was going
this
to say,
one down.
using
charts
my-
and darts. Let me see the
and
angle
then,
on this.
And then I saw one. It shoots up. These are not kid drones. These are big things. So I say to myself, all right.
size of this table.
So I listen.
Wow.
They're
Bigger. Some are
and,
bigger,
and I
yeah.
and I'm listening. Okay, and the government's saying we don't know what it is. All right. So clearly, here's my thing. Long story short, my opinion. These are 100% coming out of McGuire. It's either a government, a military program, or a government contractor, because these things are too big. There's too many of them. And if the government really didn't know what they were, they'd have F-18s out there tracking them, shooting them. So the only thing, that's what I think it is. So with that being said, and I spoke to a friend of mine at the Villanova game last night who's a retired colonel, and he goes, the public is not entitled to know what military stuff is going on. So I don't think we can say, shoot them down. We could be shooting down our own thing. And the public, so is the government supposed, yes, we're testing drones, and this is our new technology. So how is that? That's my thought on it.
So I think you are onto something. I think that Congressman Jeff Van Drew was smart to question
you can't
the
say
Iranians.
you can't say Murphy's an idiot because he didn't shoot down the
No,
drones.
here's what I said.
He should go. Listen, he should go. The military should call in Murphy, tell him what's going on, and then Murphy says, "Listen, I've had a meeting. I can't talk about it, but there's
Here's the
no
problem.
threat,
Here's
and
the
that's
problem.
it." And
you
end it.
can't say there's no threat unless somebody credible told you there was no threat.
Correct. That's right.
So clearly that happened, or it didn't happen.
but
and
you
they're
can't
making
just
it up.
shoot him down. You could be
No.
shooting down devices from McGuire Air Force Base.
Here's the thing, though,
You can't
and,
just
and
say,
as look, we have a history in this country where governors and sheriffs have said the federal government is down on the job. We're going to act.
Yeah,
It's
but that
happening
would
in
be
Texas
that
right
would
now.
be ridiculously pathetic. NORAD down, meaning like
Well,
they
we
don't
don't
know
know,
what
though.
the hell's going on in this.
Here's what I would've done.
There's hundreds of
You
them out there.
have to call them out on what is a clear lie. Why is the federal government? Why is the White House saying it could be stars?
because they lie about military things. They
But it's
have
about
to.
time we
they
the
have
people
to.
stand up. No, they don't. They should.
Like-
if
like
they're
like
looking for a
Putin-
lost nuclear package,
Putin says we're not going to invade Ukraine. Of course, he's going to say
Well,
that
that was
because
Biden's fault, but that's a
you
whole
don't.
other story.
You
That's
don't no,
another
but I'm just
podcast.
saying in military, you don't say telegraph. We're going to do this. We're going to do that.
You absolutely announce when there are tests. We don't have naval testing off the coast of our allies without saying we're testing. We get told when they're testing bombs and artillery at whether it's the joint base or you always announce it. If this is a test of new equipment, just say, guys, it's a military operation that is top secret. We can tell you there's no danger, but it's us.
Yeah, that's what they should say. That's
But
it.
they didn't say that. So what I would have done is called their bluff. We should have scrambled the 177th Air Wing, which is our Air National Guard out of Atlantic City. They have
Yeah, but you
F-16s.
can't do that because now you're
Why not?
having
Of
because
course
you're
you
having
could.
the states scrambling to call the bluff of the feds. That's
Yes.
no, you can't do that.
You
can't.
not only
You can't
not
have.
only
You
do
can't
we-
have.
should we do
excuse
it,
me, You
we
can't have
have
a
to do
state.
it.
You can't have a state fighter jets confronting.
Why not?
Because it's called the Civil War. That's not good.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
The federal government has an obligation to keep the public informed to the extent where they won't cause a public panic. What
Agreed.
they've done
Agreed.
now
100%
is
agree.
caused a near panic among people.
Agreed.
So
agreed.
Agreed. I look at
because
it
I
this
was
way.
flipped out for a day. I'm like,
Yeah.
what the hell is this?
Well,
maybe
when I'm governor, if this happens again, we're
Yeah.
going to get on the phone with the White House and say, we absolutely demand to know what's going on, because if these are foreign agents, we are going to shoot them down.
Correct,
If they
but
are
that's the Fed's
U.S.
job.
government agents,
Yeah.
you better let us know
Correct.
whose assets are these.
That's why
And the
9/11
reason I
happened.
would have put the air wing on alert is I would have called their bluff and said, we're putting our guys on alert because we are letting the public in New Jersey know, A, do not shoot these drones down.
Yeah.
This is not a civilian action. B, we're going to protect ourselves the way Greg Abbott in Texas said, oh, really? You're not going to protect the border? I'm going to put up a border wall. And he's doing it. And do you know there's now a border between Texas and New Mexico? Like, there is history and precedent of governors saying the federal government's down on the job. Because remember, the first and foremost thing, and I've had this conversation with a lot of the sheriffs around the state, we as leaders, if I am fortunate enough and blessed enough to become the next governor, have an obligation to the public. Like, not on my watch. You have no recourse if you say, wow, the federal government screwed up and here we have a bomb goes off or a drone crashes into someone's house and kills a family.
Bill.
We have an obligation to protect the public.
You and I know that if we snapped our fingers and sent home every aspiring American tomorrow or undocumented immigrant, the economy would immediately collapse.
Not true.
Listen.
Not true.
Drive around Spring Lake, drive around Belmar, drive around Seagirt, look at the houses being built, and who's going to? All right, but anyway, we don't have time for
But
that.
that's a whole other. So first of all, it's untrue.
almost done. We're almost-
The
We're at
opposite is
3:15.
true. We are in a housing crisis, in large part because of all the undocumented who are here. We have somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 20 million
if you
people.
sent them all home, okay, your restaurants would close. You know that.
No,
The
not true.
restaurant-
Not
yes,
true.
it is.
Not
Yes,
not
it is.
not
Yes,
even
it is.
remotely true. First of all,
Oh, come on.
because
No
of
one's
the
gonna wash the
liberal-
dishes.
Wait, because of the liberal policies on minimum wage, we've now had a mass movement toward automation in a lot of these places.
Listen.
So that is going to continue until we can actually get American kids off the couch. And I'll tell you how we do it. We have to change what we do. No tax on tips, number one. We're going to do that right away in New Jersey. We're going to make sure we have an apprentice program down to 14-year-olds to get them excited about an actual career. We need to get Americans working again. But the first thing we got to do is keep this country safe. And if you are not here, first, we're going to eliminate
That's the
licenses
first job
for
of
illegals.
government is to keep the people safe.
Yeah, but we're not doing it. I mean, look, who do you think is stealing all the cars, breaking into the homes? These are gangs that are fueled by these cartels coming over the Mexican border. I mean, Jody and I spent time at the Mexican border. You wouldn't believe what's going on with the kids that are being trafficked. These are not kids.
I don't think the cars being stolen are being stolen by undocumented
Well,
immigrants.
then let's
from
call it
Central
bail
and
reform.
South
Either way, we're
America.
going to end it all day one.
I
Listen,
can't find my ski bag, and
I
an
am
undocumented worker may have stolen
And you have a
it.
ski trip coming up. I mean, I got to tell you, that's
I do
really
not.
I'm
that's not
I'm
good.
going tomorrow. I am duty bound to stop this. A hard
right.
stop at 3:15. You're a fun guy.
This was great.
You
No,
listen to
this-
me.
I-
Listen to me. You got a lot of energy. I think anyone that debates you would have a big challenge on there. I think you'd be a strong debater. You're a fun guy, and I like the fact that we didn't click down like some boring ass issues, and we got to know you as a person. I think that's really cool, and I think we need more of that. But I think we scratched.
Jared.
Listen, we scratched the surface
Yeah.
on
So we gotta do it again.
issues like as the campaign.
Can we lead with the moon landing next time? Because I do. I have a very cool theory on this. I'm just throwing it out there.
Okay.
teasing.
But second is going to be that the home invasions from the guys from Newark are by undocumented immigrants from
You know
Central
what?
and South
No,
America.
you know,
That'll be the second.
But in a serious point
that'll
on
be the
that,
second
in a serious
conspiracy
point
issue
on that,
we'll hit.
we know there are so many criminals that have come into the state because we don't enforce federal detainer orders. So for me to say that, and for the government to say it's
Agreed.
not true,
That's a
if
different
the government
issue.
said we're going to enforce federal detainer orders, you tell me now what's going to happen to crime. If we start charging 14-year-olds who are ripping cars out of garages and breaking into homes as adults, you tell me what's going to happen to the crime. We're going to end bail reform, and we're going to fix the state. And I'll tell you this, Democrats are going to support it. I'm going to get more Democrat votes in
Hey,
the
if
general
peop-
election
if peop-
than any Republican in the last 30 years.
If people want to jump on your team or donate to your thing, what do they do?
SpadiaForGovernor.com. Spadea, Spadea, 4FOR governor.com.
We appreciate your time. We know you're running around crazy with all the events.
5 events a day. It's nuts.
We appreciate you taking
And I
some
get up
time
at
with
3:30.
us.
Wow. What time do you go to bed?
Yeah. There's the problem.
Come on.
There's the problem. I'll be back at like 10:30 tonight. So, and then I got to eat.
Wow.
It's awesome energy,
all
man.
good.
Thank you so
Nah,
much.
it was. Thank you so
guys.
much. Yeah.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Jerry.
That was fun.
It was fun.